Robbie Peralta fights Esteban Payan. And the second one, William Mauricio fights Bobby Volker. So Volker and Peralta, interesting names on the second tier undercard here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bobby Volker has a lot to prove, so hopefully that goes well for him.
Now we look at the Fox Sports 1 card here, and Sire of the Greats in the first fight against John Howard. Dennis Seaver fights...
Wait a minute, John Doomsday Howard?
Yes, John Doomsday Howard.
Ooh, that's a tough matchup for him.
It's almost, when I see Sire of the Great, I think of him like another fighter, Hector Lombard, where you're not sure which Sire of the Great's going to show up.
Yeah, and Doomsday is a little bit like that himself. He's unpredictable, but if he blasts you, you're dropping.
Oh, yeah. He's got the power, for sure. Or as William Regal would say, the power of the punch.
Indeed he does.
Manny the Anvil Gamburian fights Dennis Seaver.
Speaking of two fighters, you don't know which one's going to show up.
Yeah, this one, I really don't know who I'm going to pick because I like both these guys. Manny, if he's healthy, he's a beast.
But he's so injury-prone. He pops that shoulder every other fight.
I think he's one injury away. If he pops it again, he should just retire and just become a full-time trainer.
Yeah. I would actually think Seaver has more of a chance in this fight. Not because Gamburian can't be a beast when he's healthy, but because he's too much of a risk, and if he's playing it cautious, Seaver will take advantage of it.
Oh, Seaver will definitely exploit it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Gleason Tabo fights Michael Johnson. An interesting fight here for Johnson. Tabo is a very skilled fighter. Johnson, a win here puts him up in the rankings for sure.
Mm-hmm. I would tend to favor Tebow in this fight, but yeah, I always worry when Tebow fights, just based on his physique, that he'll gas out in the late rounds.
You think so?
Well, just look at the dude. He's got muscles in places people shouldn't have muscles.
Yep, no, absolutely. I agree with that. But Michael Johnson, I mean, he's one of those fighters, and I hate to say the cliche, but you never want to underestimate him, because if you do, that's when he'll get you.
I'm going to agree with you there.
Yeah. The main event for Fox Sports 1's portion of the card, Chris Lieben against Uriah Hall. I want to see Hall win here, but Lieben is such a hard luck fighter that a win here would be really good too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Hall, was he a fake? Was he real in the Ultimate Fighter house? Did he get lucky with that spinning back kick knockout?
Oh, I think he's real. I think he just has psychological issues that keep him from maximizing his performance when the big lights and the big stage are on. And they are pretty much handpicking an opponent for him and saying, here's a guy that's a little long in the tooth. If you can't beat him, you can't beat anybody.
So you're saying he's like Uriah Faber?
Why? No, Uriah Faber always performs when the spotlight's on him. What are you talking about?
Except when the title's on the line.
No, because he was successful at defending his title in WEC. It's just he hasn't won a title in UFC. So I really don't think there's any comparison other than they both had the name Uriah. I mean, Uriah Hall is a phenom, but he has yet to prove it when he's not in an empty gym. He needs to prove it when he's in front of a crowd, whereas Uriah Faber has always proved it in front of crowds.
And Chris Lieben is one of those guys that, do you think he should retire at this point, or do you think there's still some gas in the tank?
I think he probably thinks he can still keep fighting, and I think crowds love him. And I know, personal experience, I've enjoyed many Chris Lieben fights, whether it's live or watching on pay-per-view or whatever, but I worry about his health at this point. I feel like he's taken a few too many beatings, and maybe he's getting to that Chuck Liddell point where somebody needs to step in and tell him no.
He's been fighting since 2002 and was WEC's first champion in the middleweight division. So
exactly,
that says a lot how long he's been in the sport.
He's taken quite a few beatings over 11 years, and to be fair, he's dished out quite a few beatings too. It's not like it's been one-sided. It's just, of late, things have not gone his way.
Now let's move to the main card here, and Dustin Poirier fights Diego Brando, and man, I don't know.
Do you think we're going to see the diamond again? Do you think Poirier's finally going to get his stroke back here?
I would say maybe. It's one of those things where I'd like to see it happen. So, I mean, yes. This fight here, it's like a lot of these fights tonight or Saturday night. It's one of those cases where I like both fighters, and you don't know which way. Sometimes you have a card where you know that 6 of the 8 fights you have a definite favorite and a definite underdog. Poirier and Brandao,
pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, coin flip. I'd say Poirier, but I mean that's just a guess.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna look at the odds right now since we're calling it a coin flip. Let's actually see if that's what the odds makers say.
I do love how they have the odds on the actual, like when they have the fighter introductions now on the graphic. It's kind of nice.
Right, that's a Fox Sports 1 thing that ever since it came to Fox Sports 1, they've added those. So it looks like Poirier is the minus 230 favorite. Brandao is plus 180.
Okay, it's not exactly an exact coin flip, but close enough.
Well, it's almost a coin flip. It's, when it gets down to the 200 to 100 range, it's pretty darn close.
Now, what about Jim Miller and Fabricio Camões?
Miller is the heavy favorite in that one. He's minus 400.
Okay.
Which doesn't surprise me at all. I would have picked Miller in the fight anyway.
Oh, yeah, the Fighting Miller brothers. I mean, you'd be really hard-pressed not to pick them in this fight, for sure.
Now, if you were going to bet the dog in a fight on this card, I would go with Travis Brown, because he's plus 170 and Barnett's 210. I don't think that's a safe line if I'm a booking place. If I'm a sports book, I wouldn't want anything higher than even 120 on Brown, because he's got knockout power.
Would you say Brown is underrated in the heavyweight division?
I think so. I think he's proven it with the people that he's beaten that he is legit, and the fact that he lost that fight to Bigfoot Silva shouldn't be held against him because he blew out a knee and Silva pounced on him. I think he could have won that fight too if things hadn't gone south.
All right. Josh Barnett, speaking of people along in the tooth, boy, he's been around.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I understand why he's the favorite with the odds makers, given he's got more experience than Brown. But Barnett's a favorite of mine. It has been for a long time. Seen him live several times. He's a legend. He cuts great promos. He does pro wrestling on the side too. There's a lot to love about the guy. Yeah. It's just, you said it yourself. He's been around. He's a little wither-worn at this point. I'm going to go with the upset here. I think Brown will catch him.
I disagree. I think Barnett, he caught Mir with that knee at UFC 164. He's still got some gas in the tank. Looking at his record, if you take out his loss against Nogueira and Pride back in 06, his only other loss came against Daniel Cormier in Strikeforce last year.
Yeah, but then that's kind of where I'm basing this on is I saw the way Cormier was able to handle Barnett, and at the time, I actually did pick Barnett to win that fight. Mm-hmm. And having seen that and knowing that Barnett is capable of getting worked, I think Hopper Brown might even surprise us by having the cardio to go the distance with him.
It'll be an interesting fight. It has potential to be fight of the night before the two fights ahead of it. Mm-hmm. Because looking at the next fight, Stevie, Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate for the women's bantamweight title.
This is the longest odds of the entire main card. Rousey is a negative 750 favorite.
She's definitely the favorite, but by that much?
Yeah, if you wanted to make some money and you were looking for an upset, Miesha is the plus 475. That's a hell of a payoff if you bet on Miesha and she pulls it out.
I wonder what the prop bets are for what round will Miesha tap out to Rousey in.
Oh, the prop bets are on a round one armbar. That's what everybody's going for, because that's what Ronda's done to everybody.
Will Rousey's trainer with the stopwatch be there timing it?
You mean always? Judo Jean LaBelle?
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Ronda Rousey, definitely the favorite here. Tate's a great fighter, but I think Rousey wins. But I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I'm probably going to say, I hate to say it, I'm going to say third round armbar. I think Tate will put up more of a fight than we're giving her. I think third round armbar before she tops out.
I see her winning. I don't know what round it's going to be in, but I think Ronda Rousey is just... I think there are certain fighters that there's a bad style matchup between the two of them, and I think as great as Tate is, it's always going to be a bad matchup for her.
All right, and let's look at the main event. Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva, middleweight title, the rematch.
The line has gotten really close on this one, Peter.
Really?
Yeah, I would have thought Anderson was the heavy favorite, and maybe he was a week or two ago, but as it stands right now, minus 165 Silva, plus 135 Weidman. So there's your coin flip.
Mm-hmm. Does Weidman catch him again? Does Silva get cocky in the cage again?
I don't think Silva's going to goof around this time. I think the interviews and the videos that I've seen and the talk that he's had on various sports shows, he's taking this fight super serious, and he knows that clowning around was what cost him the title last time. But I like the fact the odds makers are not considering it a pushover at this point for Anderson Silva to go in there and take the title back. I mean, yes, Silva is currently the favorite, but it's so close that they're saying don't just rule out the fact that Weidman couldn't go out there and outwork him for 5 rounds, because what Silva's got is his speed and power, and his agility and flexibility to get out of submissions have always favored him well. So I'm not looking at Weidman to submit him. That's probably not going to happen. And he's going to have a hard time catching him. We know that. But here's the thing. Silva is one of the older fighters in UFC right now. And yes, we know he has cardio for days. We've seen him go to the late rounds before. But Weidman does have youth on him. Weidman does have knockout power. We know this for a fact. And Weidman is a great wrestler. And we've seen great wrestlers befuddle Anderson Silva before. We've seen Chael Sonnen do it to him for almost 5 rounds. It's anything can happen when two guys are this skilled. And one guy is a veteran with plenty of power and plenty of speed, but one guy is young and hungry. And I guess this will be my second upset pick technically, but since it's a coin flip, I don't feel that's so technical. I'm saying Chris Weidman retains here.
I'm going to disagree. I think the Spider gets the title back and sets up the epic trilogy match to end all matches probably down the road in the summer of 2014.
See, I just got to think of what Todd Martin said when he was talking about this issue on O'Brien's show. He said there's this tendency in people's minds to favor the champion to get a title back after they lost it, and I think that's an incorrect assumption. I think sometimes you have to go with the fact that the guy who won a title won it for a reason, and he's not just going to lose it in a rematch.
Now, if Silva does lose here, does he retire?
No, I don't think he'd retire. I think he'd have to reevaluate his plans going into the future because he would no longer be a top contender, but I don't think he'd go away. I mean, the guy just moved his whole family to California. I think he knows he has to keep fighting to pay for their future.
Maybe he goes up in weight and goes into light heavy.
I mean, he's fought at light heavy before as an exhibition and just for the sport of it, but I don't know if he'd do that full time because I think he'd still be the most competitive at middleweight.
I don't know. I mean, if he can't beat Weidman, he goes to light heavy, has a couple wins, fights John Jones, Silva, and that's a huge money fight down the road for sure.
But there's one problem with this theory.
John Jones is still the champ.
Well, there's another problem with that besides.
Hey, what's that?
What other guy do we know that likes to bounce between middleweight and light heavyweight?
Chael Sonnen.
No, that's not who I'm talking about.
Who?
A phenom from Brazil.
Vitor.
Exactly. I don't think Silva wants to fight Belfort or vice versa.
No. But, I mean, you gotta think, after this fight, what happens to these two fighters? Weidman wins here, he's the definite champ. He loses here, it sets up the rematch, the trilogy. And UFC loves their trilogies. So you could book that if Weidman loses. If he wins, who's the number one contender for the middleweight division right now, besides Silva? Who's the next in line?
Belfort?
Weidman Belfort in Brazil?
That'd be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, so either way, Weidman, he's at the top of the mountain, and Silva's going to try his darndest to knock him off.
But then, like I said, you've got that problem. If Silva wins...
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. But we'll see. I mean, that's the great thing about UFC. Anything can happen. Look at Robbie Lawler.
That's true. Yeah, he went from not even being in the UFC to now being the number one contender, besides, of course, 1A. Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, 1A right now.